Have you ever wondered what Romeo and Juliet would be like as a fantasy science fiction story? Yeah, neither have I, but Keith Zane thought that the premise was good enough to make a light novel out of it, and decided to give it a very long title, Our Last Crusade or The Rise of a New World. The novel was successful enough to warrant an anime adaptation by animation studio Silverlink, the same folks responsible for shows like Beaufry and Wiseman's Grandchild. The show is centered on two people on opposite sides of a war who discover that they have a lot in common with each other as they begin to slowly fall for one another. It's a story that will feel very familiar to most people, but its blended science fiction fantasy setting makes things interesting and helps it stand out from the ever-growing list of fantasy anime. This series is set during the seemingly endless war between two nations, the technologically advanced Heavenly Empire and the home to astral mages known as the Nebulous Sovereignty. The male protagonist Iska is from the Empire, while the female protagonist, Alice, also known as the Ice Calamity Witch, is from the Sovereignty. Astral energy was discovered long ago, and many people that came into contact with it gained magical powers and became astral mages. Fear and later hatred spread throughout the Empire due to the emergence of astral mages. Those with magical abilities were hunted down and imprisoned. As a result, the Sovereignty was founded by a powerful astral mage, and the two nations have been at odds with each other for a while. The story begins with Iska being released from prison after breaking out an astral mage, and he is given a mission to capture Alice. After they meet on the battlefield, and several times thereafter, they soon discover that they share a common goal for peace between both sides, among other things. Throughout the show, Iska and Alice constantly run into each other, or end up close by one another. In the beginning, these encounters were purposefully inorganic and made the show feel formulaic. The author frames it as being an act of fate or their destiny bringing these two characters together, which I personally don't like, but it does fit with the setting and it does act as a decent catalyst for certain things to happen. Some of the peaceful moments that they share together not only build their relationship, but also add another dimension to the characters. For example, one of the times that they meet is at a restaurant. They end up sharing a table and they discover that they both love the same kind of food. This is a minor detail, but the preferences that we discover that Iska and Alice have during that scene at the restaurant and later somewhere else makes them seem more realistic. Outside of a few scenes, we aren't given a lot of insight into these characters. We only get very brief glimpses of stuff from Iska's past and nothing from Alice's past, so most of their characterization is conveyed through their actions or interactions with others. The growing romance between these two characters is one of the major selling points of the show, which I think is handled quite well despite my distaste for how Suzanne brings them together. The way these characters slowly develop feelings of attraction and mutual respect for each other feels genuine and believable. This is conveyed through the little things such as the characters' inability to stop thinking about each other or the subtle ways in which their behavior changes due to the time they spent together. Given the fact that these characters seem to have a lot in common with one another, it isn't hard to believe that they would start to like each other. Besides successfully establishing the relationship between Iska and Alice, there was a lot of world building which was done at a steady pace. While the show is never bogged down by exposition, it would have been much better had they shown us a lot more of what was explained to the audience. We're told about the witch hunts for astral mages and how the founder of the Sovereignty devastated the Empire, but we only get brief images accounting these events. There is a lot of dialogue from characters talking about stuff that has happened throughout the years due to the conflict between the two nations, but a lot of it we don't actually get to see. One of the themes Our Last Crusade tackles is prejudice in that both sides resent and reject the other simply because of their differences and history. We're told that the Empire branded the astral mages as witches and that they only see them as monsters or demons. There's a lot of lip service towards the discrimination of astral mages, but we rarely get to see any of it firsthand throughout the season. Nevertheless, the world itself was brought to life through the great animation produced by Silverlink. The 2D animation in general is good, and even some of the CG doesn't look too bad. The worst thing I noticed was a moving truck that looked kinda odd. Almost like the frame rate was low, almost resulting in it looking kinda choppy. CG and 2D animation can look weird when mixed together in some anime, but the 3D models didn't look too out of place here. From what I can tell, Silverlink didn't use a lot of 3D, and it actually looked good in a couple of instances where they did. They used 3D for one of the effects tied to a witch's magical ability, which I thought looked really cool. The effects in general for both the magical abilities and futuristic weaponry that the soldiers used were visually appealing. The battles were entertaining due to the mix of different magical abilities and technology. The last thing I want to mention briefly before closing out this review is the voice acting. The English dub voice cast is great, with the standouts for me being Emily Nebbs as Alice and Lindsay Seedle as Captain Mismas. Emily makes Alice sound a lot more mature than I expected, and she nails the parts where the character lets down her guard and talks casually with Iska. The casting for Captain Mismas was perfect because Lindsay's voice perfectly matches the character's childlike appearance. On the other hand, Isu's voice actor is a bit flat in my opinion. Is it me, or does he say a lot of his lines with as little energy as possible? Jason Liebrecht was the weakest performance in the cast, which sucks considering that he's voicing the main male lead. The other voice actors were good, but nothing noteworthy. Overall, Our Last Crusade or The Rise of a New World is an enjoyable series that offers a fresh new take on the Romeo and Juliet premise. The action, presentation, and romance element are all solid, but it doesn't show enough to reinforce the conflict that has been set up and strengthen its lead characters. Anyway, those were my thoughts on Our Last Crusade or The Rise of a New World. Let me know what you guys think about this show in the comment section below. Like the video, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. This has been Fear No Hate. I'm out of here. Peace.